STEM be the top priority. And what a better person to be moderating this discussion than the Chief of Corporate Innovation of IE Business School, also the chairwoman for IE Rockets, which is our global accelerator for EdTech startups. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Lucia Figar and her panel.
Gracias, Paris. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us in this panel titled, Should High-Quality STEM Education Be the Top Priority? This is a very important topic. We had the Minister of Education yesterday making very important comments on it. And I have three world experts that are going to give their insight this morning to the enlightened audience. We had in the first place Andrew Meltzer. Andy is a psychologist. He's the co-director of the Institute for Learning and Brain Sciences of the University of Washington, Seattle. He's done a lot of research on child development, but for the purpose of this panel, the most interesting is he's done a lot of research on STEM and cultural stereotypes. We also have Adam Seldo, who is a mathematics teacher. He is also a graduate from West Point, so military. He's been in charge of technology in many US public schools, but currently he's the head of education partnerships at Facebook. And finally, we have also Gonzalo Manrique. Gonzalo Manrique is an engineer, an MBA in Wharton. He's the co-founder and CEO of Ironhack. Ironhack is a network of tech schools around the world. You have already, is it 9 or 10 schools?
9.
9 schools, mainly in Europe and Latin America. So I'll give some facts along the presentation. These are the world's top companies, the biggest companies. The ones in white are non-tech companies. So we see out of the world's top companies are basically technology companies, STEM-based companies. We also know 75% of all the new jobs being created will require skills in STEM. It's true, it has been said this week that we don't know exactly which are the job profiles. Many of them don't exist today, but we know they will require STEM skills. This year, the projections of 2019 is that 750,000 digital jobs are unfilled only in Europe. 40% of employers report they cannot find the skills they need. And at the same time we have, this is European data by the European Commission, 3.3 million unemployed, youth unemployment, minors than 25. So the first question that I want to draw to the panelists is basically the skills gap. This is a technology skills gap. We have on one side 40% of employers that cannot find the skills they need. On the other side, we have 15.4 youth unemployment. So I wanted to ask the three panelists from the different views, who can help us really fix this gap? Who has the main responsibility or to help us arrange this, which is basically a huge collective failure of society? Should it be schools? Should it be universities, enterprises or corporations, or other? So I would like to have each one of your opinions. So maybe Adam would like to begin.
Sure, thank you for joining us this morning. I think as far as culpability for this, or who has the responsibility to really address the tech skills gap, certainly falls on all levels, so primary, secondary education, university, and corporations like Facebook. I think the key challenges that we have to address first are the instructional models. I mean, certainly it's almost cliche now to say that teaching hasn't changed that much, but I need not look further than my own kid's classroom to see that that's very much true. the way we teach and the way we assess has not changed that much. And so we are still looking at the same skills we did early on in the 1900s, late 1800s. I think second is teacher preparation. Just like we're teaching the same way and we are assessing the same way, we expect teachers to teach and assess the same way they have in the past. And while we have little pockets of creativity and project-based learning and all these key buzzwords in the way that teachers are supposed to teach, I don't feel they're being properly trained or we're supporting them as institutions to be able to teach this way. And third challenge, I would say, is that we haven't paid enough attention to diversity. And so diversity as a focus, we are, I think, through both institutional design and practice, ignoring the needs and cultural concerns of a large segment of our population. And all these challenges together, I think, contribute in some form or fashion to a tech skills gap that all of us are responsible to address.
Okay.
Yeah, so when I think about why we're not bringing as many students into STEM as we might, I think of two fundamental ideas that have come from research. One is that students often have a stereotype that to be successful in STEM, you have to have innate brilliance, that you need to be born that way and not necessarily work at it. And you know, that's interesting because not all disciplines have that sort of stereotype. If students want to think of becoming a doctor or a lawyer or a small business owner or a journalist, they think that their education will be very important, how much experience they get, what they learn in school will help them on their success. But students have this stereotype, often with Bill Gates in their mind or Mark Zuckerberg, that you need to be a sort of a programming prodigy. Perhaps you know more than the teacher, can drop out of school. And so what we need to promote in the kids and the students is something that's called a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. Experience, training, practice really makes a difference for success in STEM careers. We all know that, but the students have this idea of innate brilliance. And a second related thing is there is, again, a stereotype or a belief that STEM disciplines are very non-social. And the idea is that many students are altruistic and want to do social good, want to work with others and help others. And again, there's this belief that be successful in STEM is a lonely person, socially awkward, programming all through the night and not working with others. And that dissuades certain students from entering the STEM workforce or being trained. So again, we need to change that by diversifying the models that students have in their head about who belongs in STEM, who can be successful in STEM, and something that we all know that to have a successful STEM career is often to work in teams, communicate, collaborate, and solve problems that are doing social good. If we can change those ideas in the students' heads, we can attract more of them to the pipeline.
But in changing this mindset, I mean, would it be finally schools or maybe parents? I mean, what are you trying to say?
I think it's all of the above. I think it does start very early, and we can talk about that perhaps. It starts with parents in the homes, but even what teachers exude, what the peer-to-peer communication is about this innate brilliance. Are you good at math? Are you naturally good at math? Are you a prodigy at math? Rather than that you can work on it. And then the idea of that students want to help others. They want helping professions, maybe altruistically change society. Of course, STEM disciplines do that, but that's not the stereotype about it. So we're all responsible, even policymakers, for helping change the stereotype of what STEM is.
What's your view, Gonzalo?
I wanted to build on that point. I think it's this mindset and stereotype is definitely there, and it's there from a very early age when we have to choose between doing, at least in Europe, right? If you want to go the science route or liberal arts route, and then you're kind of set on fixed rails and not meant to change your career or subject of expertise for 40 years, right? So changing that mindset, it's part of our mission, right? Trying to help people change careers and helping people understand that it's possible, right? that just because you are good at liberal arts or you have a tendency or you're creative, it doesn't mean that you cannot be a developer, right? So providing these kind of options, I think it's a great way to start this change and addressing this gap. But I agree also that it's a broader problem that should be tackled from the traditional education standpoint, from the universities, right? Trying to align their incentives with the incentives of the student. So become more ROI driven for students. And also from the, there's also a great responsibility from the corporates, right? They need to help onboard better their recent hires. They need to provide and trying to build bridges that help overcome this gap, right, that is existing, and also for the system, the governments to enable and help there to be more options in education. So options that are maybe not traditional degrees and not, let's say, certified degrees, but just more options that might be tackling the skill gaps in particular and providing an accelerated path to employment.
Okay, just a question for Anna, because we've been really teaching math and science in the curriculum for years. So really, what have we been doing wrong, or how is the STEM approach different from how we have traditionally been teaching science, math, etc.?
I think one marked change in the STEM approach, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, is very simply the fact that we're naming it as a cross-functional endeavor. We're not doing math discretely as a subject as much. We are not doing science discretely as a subject, but we're approaching rich problems that require different mindsets to address and different teams of teachers to really put together into something that kids really want to solve. And I'll pick up on something that Andrew said, I think is very important. The population of students that we are teaching today, both younger students and university students, are more socially focused than I think they've ever been, and than we've ever been. And I think that the work that they do, tying to some purpose in their individual lives, makes a lot of sense. And STEM careers, to some degree, make this possible. And so another thing that Andrew said that I think is important about STEM instruction now, and the responsibility that we all play, is in the notion that you cannot be what you cannot see. And so making sure that the students have examples of who a STEM student is, and that is really any student. And in fact, students having these examples are things that at least Facebook is trying to address. For example, we have a growing diverse population of engineers and business folks at Facebook, and one of our programs called Tech Prep very purposefully addresses you can't be what you can't see by providing examples of people telling their stories of how they arrived at their careers, and also making materials available for parents and counselors at school to say, these are the types of careers that are possible in technology, and these are the types of salaries you can make, and so forth. And integrating that into a holistic curriculum, I think, is one of the bigger changes that we've made in just teaching math problems and science experiments over time.
Okay, I'm going to maybe ask Gonzalo Manrique, because this is a statement Tim Cook said in France last year, which is interesting for me, not only because he said it in French, which probably caused a lot of happiness in the French people, you know, not having to learn English anymore, but really makes me think that we have always, I mean, he's a very intelligent and powerful man, but we've always been thinking of speaking languages that connect humans with humans, so English, French, German, whatever. And this really puts you in a place to think that maybe coding, you know, will connect us with many more, you know, machines than humans. So he said specifically, you will be able to speak to 7 billion people. I don't know exactly how he counted it. Maybe it was humans in the world or also machines, but maybe. So actually, do you think coding is more important? Is a language more important than English today?
I mean, it's like, I wouldn't say it's more important. I'd say it's equally important. English is, I think, but it's kind of starting to be taken for granted, and it's easier and easier to learn. But I think it's a good statement to bring this point to attention and to light, right? Coding, it's becoming so important and pivotal for the education of everyone, and it's important at different levels. It helps you at a very basic level understand better how to solve problems and tackle different problems. Then I think, and a premise of Ironhack is that coding and coding-related jobs are going to become kind of the blue-collar job of the century. So great job opportunities and enabling you to speak with machines to extract data, information from data sets, and just super, super important. And third, as a manager, right, I think it's even more important to be tech savvy and to have some kind of coding knowledge in order, as you know, technology becomes more core to the strategy of all companies. It's important for any manager to have an understanding in order to drive the strategy of any company, right? So I think it's important in many, many levels, and my little girl hopefully will learn to code real soon.
Are schools in US typically teaching coding now at primary level?
One of the interesting data points to support what he said is that I just visited São Paulo, Brazil, and visited with some coding schools there, and asked the instructors, you know, what are the challenges you face in placing your coding students in jobs? It was a boot camp type course where they took 6 weeks of JavaScript coding, and at the end of that boot camp, they were certified and ready to go be a junior engineer in a company. And I understand Tim Cook's point when he says that, and I agree that coding is extremely important. But the barrier to jobs that the instructor noted was the command of the English language. Their students, English, well, I don't know that I would say English first, but I would say that it's extremely important from the eyes of this instructor that her students were not prepared to interview at Google, at Facebook, at some of the bigger tech companies, because the interview skills they required was the ability to communicate in English. So in those cases, coding was not enough. And certainly if you want to reach broad audiences, you have to have some facility in a language that's spoken around the world. So I think it's important.
Okay, next thing I would like this question for Andrew, for Andy. This is some data, actual data on science. It could apply to math also. So we have on one column like PISA scores. It's 15-year-olders, OECD. So between men and women, I mean, there's no significant difference. And then it's the other column shows very dissimilar pathways when it gets to university. So there's a very, very little number of women, girls, that pursue science degrees. So you've done a lot of research around this. What's your view?
Well, this is a very, very important issue for education, and there's a distinction to be made between recruitment of women in STEM disciplines and the retention of women in STEM disciplines. There are a lot of people working on retention. How do you keep women in STEM jobs if they're already in the workforce? But we've done some research on recruitment, how to bring more women into the STEM workforce or into wanting to study STEM in college. And here, science has discovered that the stereotypes held by society deeply influence our young children. So there are many stereotypes in society about old and young and rich and poor, but there are also gender stereotypes, and there are gender stereotypes about academic disciplines. And a very pervasive gender stereotype is that boys do STEM, do robotics, do physics, engineering, and math, and girls do humanity and literacy. There have been surveys in Spain and in the United States, and that stereotype is very strongly held by the public. It may not be held by people in this room. We have a diverse audience, but I think you're aware of the stereotype that's held. Now, it turns out that those stereotypes seep into the minds of our students at extraordinarily young ages. We did some research in the United States and also in Spain, showing that by second grade, children are highly stereotyped, and about 75% of the girls think that math goes with boys, not with girls. And our particular research about that, we don't have to go over the methods, but we do things like give young children, first and second graders, 2 buckets and ask them to put the girl things over here and the boy things over here. We give them a book and they put it in the girl bucket. Letters, girl. Numbers, they put in the boy bucket. Calculator, boy. Arithmetic, boy. Computer, boy. Robot, boy. By second grade,
What age
highly
is that? What age?
stereotyped.
Second grade is what age?
Yeah, the boys and girls are the same age, and these were 6 and 7-year-old children.
6,
that we
7-year-old.
tested. Yeah, we tested about 200 of them. So this stereotype affects young children while they're still learning their mathematical facts, their multiplication tables. There's this feeling that math or STEM doesn't go with me. So we're very interested in helping teach the young girls and are developing programs how to resist these stereotypes. We love to change society and change the stereotypes that are ambient in the world, but that's very difficult. We think we have some methods to teach young girls and boys to resist stereotypes, that those are only beliefs in the society, but they don't have to apply to you.
But for
And
example,
we think that will make a
what do you
difference.
do you have any experience of an actual, program trying to change this at the age of 6? Have you done this at schools?
Yes, we've done research about this. So we've done some research with first grade girls where we gave them programming experience on very simple, with what we called a pet robot. It was a robot that looked like a pet and could move spatially 2 steps up and 1 to the right. And we showed them how to program this pet robot on their cell phones or on smartphones we gave them. Before this intervention, the girls said, I don't do robots. These are first grade girls. I don't do robots. Boys do robots. I don't do programming. Bill Gates does programming. I'm a girl. I don't do that. We gave them this programming experience. We have beautiful videotapes of 6-year-old girls smiling and programming their phone and making the robot move. And we then give psychological tests asking about interest, motivation, choices, career aspirations, and we can show we can change the needle by giving girls the right experience at the right time. So it's a responsibility of everybody to try to, we would like to change stereotypes in society, but if we can't change everybody's mind in society, perhaps we can give the little girls early experience that they otherwise wouldn't have, and we can teach them to resist stereotypes.
Yeah, Gonzalo.
So on that point, when we started Ironhack, we noticed very early on that we were attracting over 90% of men. We just thought this could not go on, and started thinking about how to solve this issue and kind of even out kind of the number of students. And we've done two kind of actions that have been quite successful. One is partnering up with companies such as Facebook, actually, to provide scholarships for women in tech and other types of diversity, to promote diversity. And the other action is to provide role models, right? So to have students that have passed through a program and been success case studies, right? Have them come into class, promote them, go to events, and as soon as anyone sees, hey, I can be that person, this is super doable, here's the path, here's what I have to do, right? Then you start changing the mindset of women and other kind of diverse groups. And we've seen an increase to where now we have very close to 40% women, and we're trying to maintain it there or go up, so it's been quite successful.
Yeah, I was about to speak about teachers. Adam, maybe you have some insight from your former positions as a math teacher and as manager of all the technology initiatives at US public schools. But how do we help teachers to, there's a lot of principals here this morning of Spanish schools. How do we help teachers to integrate IT or STEM disciplines into their curriculum? Do you think there should be IT teachers in primary education, or do you think it should be the rest of the teachers, any teacher actually bringing the disciplines into the courses? And secondly, really, how early should we start doing this? I mean, how fair is it to speak about engineering in the first grade, really?
Certainly, I think there are probably two major things that school leaders can do to help STEM education grow. One of which is to set expectations, that this absolutely needs to be a focus of all teachers. Now, does that mean the reading specialist has to do math problems with a calculator? Maybe not, but you do have to set the expectation that our classes are going to be data rich. Our projects are going to be cross-functional in disciplines, and that we should have projects that involve all subjects. And the notion that I'm not a math person or math is not for me is not acceptable anymore, and I don't want to hear it out of you, and I don't want to hear it out of our students. Even our physical education or gym teachers can use data in their courses. What is your heart rate? How is that changing over time? How fast has your kilometer time improved? So forth and so on. So setting the expectation that at minimum data should be part of our courses, I think is fair. The second, in order to set this expectation, you certainly have to provide the right supports. So just setting expectations without supports would be negligent, and sometimes that's what we do in education. We say this is going to be the assessment, get there, you're on your own. But this is one of the major problems with teachers, is that they are not supported in the ways they need to be supported, either through curriculum or the instruction and professional development they need to get there. So what does that look like? I think it starts by supporting teacher communities.
Not earlier in the schools of education, not earlier in the schools of education initially,
absolutely.
Maybe?
But there's many forms in the way teachers get trained, right? There's traditional schools of education, there are kind of boot camp type programs for teachers and internships, all types of ways they get prepared, but certainly data and those expectations have to flow through to that. But I think it starts with these communities. There are teachers who are very good at this. And one of the challenges is they don't have the mechanism to share this with other teachers. And I think it's incumbent upon school leaders to put that mechanism in place. Certainly I'm biased from a Facebook perspective that community is important, but I see evidence of this both in my own practice, that I need to talk and learn from other people, and I need to feel supported as an educator. Second, I think, is access to the types of materials that make this easier. So if I'm a reading specialist or a literature teacher, and my school leader or my teacher preparation instructor says, I expect you to use data, and they don't provide me any resources, that's pretty challenging. I'm just going to go search on the internet, and who knows what I'm going to find. So I think proper resource curation is important. Having these rich projects or problems that are based in the social issues that students are interested in pursuing is a non-trivial task that we all have a responsibility, especially school leaders have a responsibility to provide.
Okay, so let's move to the workplace. We've seen the rise of alternative programs. We opened just a month ago a 42 school in Telefónica, Ironhack, we have here the CEO, we have exponential learning opening in HIOPS and boot camps, data science boot camps at IE, we have, of course, Udacity, we have industry certifications, certifying Salesforce, Google. You have our own certification also for Facebook? For tech?
Marketing.
Marketing, you do marketing? You certify marketing professionals?
Yes.
Okay. So really a question is we have traditional universities that have been for decades teaching tech. What are they doing wrong? Or is it a structural problem at them? Or what do you think is the rise of all these models?
So historically, I think it's interesting to see how this is the big change that has happened over the last few years. There was a massive crisis in Europe, especially that hit especially hard in Spain, with over 50% youth unemployment back in 2013, and heavy and big numbers for underemployment. So you had people that were architects, engineers, right, barely making it to the end of the month, right? And there were people with engineering degrees, masters on top of masters, right? So I think people started to realize that that there was a problem there, right? That degrees didn't necessarily get you to a job, and the value, I think, of the traditional degrees is starting to erode. And this is, I think, a little bit has to do with the fact that maybe traditional universities and educational institutions have failed to adapt with times and have failed on their promise, right, to deliver employment in some cases. I don't want to be too harsh, but so when you align, right, the incentives of educational institutions with the job, with a positive ROI for students, then you start getting demand and you get results, right? So I think because there's this misalignment, you have alternative institutions that don't even provide an official certificate having huge traction, right? So 42, for example, it's a free, completely free program, no official degree whatsoever, right? A couple of years, so huge time commitment, but you have thousands upon thousands of applications. Because then you get a job, right? So companies with this type of STEM education, they don't need, you can demonstrate what you learn, you can demonstrate with your portfolio that you're job ready, right? So as long as the certificate loses, let's say, its original value that was gateway to employment, then the competition, you know, the ground just opens up for competition. And I think this is just what's happening. And I think it's good. I think options are good. Some people are going to still want to get a degree, go through a traditional 4-year program. Some people are going to have a faster gateway to employment, right? Some people are going to want to combine maybe a few of these. Some people want to reskill later and pivot their careers. So I think options are good. And again, alignment with employment, I think it's what's key and what's missing a bit in the traditional educational institutions.
Okay, now I wanted to focus on this because you mentioned that coding and the new focus on STEM also gives you capabilities of critical thinking, strategic thinking. This was something that was said a few years ago, you know, robots will never be able to do strategic thinking like humans. It's also said for critical thinking, empathy, whatever. You know, we had last year, you know, Google say AlphaGo beat the world champion on Go, which is basically a strategy game, not chess or anything. But so I wanted to ask you as a psychologist, and which do you think that will be always, you know, human capabilities, or what's the role of the humanities really? I mean, do you think, for example, people management or dealing with people with their brain, understanding, empathy, all these kinds, will always remain, you know, a core capabilities of people, or do you think that they will be also taken over by machines finally?
Well, this is related to the question of how much humanities and art should be taught to people who are interested in going into STEM disciplines, because it's often thought that topics of the humanities and ethics and moral reasoning resides with the human beings, and something about efficiency and correctness in solutions and rapidity goes with the machines. So I think from an educational point of view, it is very, very important to bring together science and humanities. In America, there's a budget cut that leads us to cutting out humanities, art, and music in the schools, and sometimes thinking of humanities in competition with STEM. And there's some research showing that when we cut out music and lateral thinking from the arts, it hurts students. You'll hear a little bit about that this afternoon in a symposium at 1710 that Pat Cole is giving about language and technology and whether machines can solve linguistic problems. In any case, I think that humanities can contribute a lot to STEM learning, especially around ethics and moral reasoning, and I hope that education involves that for our STEM students. You know, genetics is starting to edit our genome. Autonomous machines are confronting problems that involve choices and moral decision making. Some people are talking about whether we can develop algorithms to make moral machines. And I don't know about making moral machines, but I'm quite sure that our students in the educational system who are studying STEM ought to confront and think about moral reasoning problems, ethical problems, and questions of values. Those are essential and important and will help and enhance the technology that we humans interact with.
Okay, so we're coming to the end nearly. We have a few minutes left. I wanted also to focus on the market, what kind of tech skills the market is asking for. This is a huge trend, data science, the rise of data scientists, the impact they have in management. These are, I took this data, it's actual from Europe, Eurostat, so these are the most in-demand jobs tech-related in Europe. There's a lot of health-related vacancies also, but in tech, these are the most in-demand jobs. By the way, none of them existed 10 years ago. So my question maybe to Adam is, I mean, you're one of the companies in the world hiring more people, STEM-based, tech-based. Do you miss anything in that list now? What do you think that in 10 years will be? Will it be the same 10? Is there anything missing? What are you looking for now at Facebook?
I think the first thing to note is that that list will likely change significantly within the next 10 years, so I couldn't dare to predict what jobs may be part of that, but I can tell you that there are some missing from that even now, as we're growing very rapidly. Most of Facebook, the application, and the family of apps are run through a significant part of artificial intelligence. So a lot of the work is done by coding and programming. The way we catch bad things that are happening before they're viewable by other people and all of that is part of artificial intelligence. And
so you have a lot of job openings now for artificial?
Yes.
Do you find
machine
enough
learning,
people?
artificial intelligence, data science, they're all very related and very much in demand. I would also say a huge focus of Facebook right now is building the next computing platform of augmented and virtual reality.
Augmented and
yes,
virtual
AR,
reality.
VR, augmented and virtual reality. And so those jobs may be missing from that list, and those jobs include anything from 3D design to mapping the virtual world. In fact, Facebook just had what's called OC6, our Oculus Developers Conference last week, where we announced initiatives to kind of map the world and build this augmentation over the world. And this work requires some people who have very specific skill sets that are in high demand that just don't exist right now. And so I would say machine learning should be on this list definitely and will become increasingly important over time. Some of the more routine tasks that we do will be replaced, I think, with the noted differences, as we discussed earlier, where humans become much more important, right? But artificial intelligence, AI, machine learning, augmented virtual reality need to be on that list.
Do you partner with universities or technical centers? Do you do your own training also for those disciplines?
All of the above. We partner.
Both?
We have tons of partnerships. So with universities and boot camps like Ironhack and other folks, we have very specific programs. So I'll give you one example called Engineer in Residence. We work, again, I mentioned diversity is very important to Facebook, and building a pipeline of engineers that represent the users that we have around the world, the people that actually use Facebook, is extremely important. And so we have very specific partnerships with what we call historically black colleges and universities in the United States. And we send Facebook engineers to teach very specific skill sets, such as React, JavaScript, or machine learning, into these universities for semesters at a time. And they work specifically with the university and the degree granting programs to make sure that they have the skill sets that companies like Facebook and others require.
I see. And own centers also.
Sorry?
You have your own centers also of
Yes.
artificial intelligence?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we have run out of time. Just a minute to say thanks to our fabulous speakers. Thank you, everybody. I hope that you find interesting insights on why STEM should be a priority. Thank you.